This passage is adapted from Kevin N. Leland, Darwin's Unfinished Symphony, How Culture Made the Human Mind. Animal behavior researchers have defined teaching as behavior targeted only at a naive observer, and that helps the naive observer acquire a skill or knowledge at some cost to the teacher. Meerkats are a small carnivorous species of mongoose that must survive in the harsh African desert through coordination and teamwork. Meerkat pups are almost entirely reliant on food provisioned by older group members, known as helpers, which include both parents and other colony members. Yet, by 3 months of age, those same youngsters have become entirely self sufficient at feeding and can handle a variety of difficult and dangerous prey, including lizards, spiders, and even scorpions with their deadly stings. Recent work shows that the helpers facilitate this transition to nutritional independence by gradually introducing pups to live prey. Cambridge University researchers Alex Thornton and Catherine McAuliffe set out to establish whether this process meets the definition of teaching. This required them to determine whether the transfer of live prey by helpers occurred solely in the presence of the pups at some cost to the adults and led to the youngsters learning about food. Adult meerkats normally consume prey immediately, but when young pups are present, they typically kill or disable mobile prey items before carrying them to a begging pup. Scorpions are often disabled by removing the sting, allowing pups to interact safely with the live prey. As pups grow older, they are increasingly given intact prey, stings and all. Thornton and McAuliffe established that whether or not helpers modify prey through sting removal before provisioning hung critically on the sound of the pup's begging calls, which changes with age. These researchers played recordings of the begging calls of old pups to groups with young pups, which led adults to bring back live prey, while playing the calls of young pups to groups with old pups caused an increase in the proportion of dead prey provisioned. In spite of the adult meerkat being fooled, the experimental manipulation demonstrates that the helpers normally adjusted their behavior to the age and hence competence of the pups. Indeed, the adults exhibited considerable sensitivity to the performance of pups, nudging prey items if the pups ignored them, retrieving escaped prey, and modifying the prey some more, for instance, disabling further if pups were struggling. This provisioning strategy incurs cost because considerable time is spent monitoring the pups as they handle live prey, and there is a non-trivial risk that the pups will lose the prey item. However, the strategy creates opportunities for the pups to acquire hunting skills. Thornton and McAuliffe were also able to provide experimental evidence that the helper's behavior promoted skill acquisition. Pups that were artificially given additional opportunities to handle live stingless scorpions subsequently outperformed siblings that had been given dead scorpions, showing that the opportunity to practice on disabled but live scorpions facilitates skill acquisition. Thornton and McAuliffe had demonstrated that the meerkat helper's behavior was a genuine example of animal teaching. A clue as to why helpers teach is found with the observation that pups very rarely find mobile prey items themselves. Helpers can therefore actively facilitate the pup's acquisition of handling skills by giving them otherwise unavailable opportunities to practice handling prey. In the long term, adults benefit by reducing the costs of provisioning through hastening the time to independence as well as through increased pup survival. And then we have these two figures, so we'll come to these later. The main purpose of the passage is to raise questions about meerkat behavior that future research may be able to answer, present a series of studies about meerkat pups that contradict previous research into their behavior, describe research that has furthered scientific understanding of meerkat behavior, address the limitations of applying research on adult meerkats to the behavior of meerkat pups. So this is C. The passage is describing research conducted by Cambridge researchers that led to a better understanding of how adult meerkats help younger meerkats learn to hunt prey. So that's exactly what the passage is about. It does not raise questions that are left open for future research to answer, so it's not A. It does not present research or studies that contradict earlier research about meerkat behavior, so not B. And it doesn't look at the limitations of applying research on adult meerkat, right? In fact, it's looking at how adult meerkats facilitate prey hunting for younger meerkats. So C is the best answer. Lines 1 to 14 mainly serve to. So let's look at those lines. So from here to here, right? Meerkats are a small carnivorous species of mongoose that must survive in the harsh African desert through coordination and teamwork. So this introduces meerkats as a species that survives in the African desert. Meerkat pups are reliant on food provision by older group members known as helpers. And by 3 months of age, those same youngsters have become entirely self-sufficient. So this basically sets up the context for the research that is described in the passage. Provide background information on meerkats and their young. Acknowledge the particular difficulties involved in meerkat research. Give an overview of the studies discussed in the rest of the passage. Pose a research question that will be answered in the rest of the passage. So it's A, right? This is just giving you a background information on what meerkats are, how they help their young in prey hunting, and how by the age of 3 months, the young are sufficiently self-reliant. So this does not bring out any difficulties involved with meerkat research. It's just presenting background information. It does not mention the studies at all. The studies come later. And it does not bring out a research question. So A. Which choice best supports the idea that adult helpers are capable of assessing individual meerkat pup skills and adjusting the training they provide based on that assessment? Okay, so 18 to 21, Cambridge teaching, and 30, scorpion spray. Cambridge teaching, and 30, scorpions and prey. Okay. And then we have 50, indeed struggling, 60, however, skills. 50, where is 50? Indeed struggling. I don't have line numbers here, so let's see. Indeed, yeah, indeed. And where is struggling? This, and then 60, however, and skills. Okay. So Cambridge University researchers Alex Thornton and Catherine McAuliffe set out to establish whether this process meets the definition of teaching. Scorpions are often disabled by removing the sting, allowing pups to interact safely with the live prey. Indeed, the adults exhibited considerable sensitivity to the performance of pups, nudging prey items if the pups ignored them, retrieving escaped prey, and modifying the prey some more, for instance, disabling further if pups were struggling. And however, the strategy creates opportunities for the pups to acquire hunting skills. So this is C. These lines, indeed, the adults exhibited. They very clearly show that the adults assess how the pups are performing with the prey and modify their behavior accordingly. So that is what we were looking for. Option A just sets up the experiment that the Cambridge researchers did. So this does not talk about adult meerkats' behavior. Option B talks about one of the processes that is involved in teaching. So again, does not talk about behavior change and assessment. And option D just kind of summarizes this strategy that adult meerkats have of creating opportunities for the pups, right? So the very specific evidence for modifying their behavior in response to assessment is option C. As used in line 20, meets most nearly means. So line 20 is here. To establish whether this process meets the definition of teaching. So the process of adults introducing pups to live prey, whether that process meets the definition of teaching. So meets the fulfills, right? Whether it fulfills the definition, whether it provides a basis for the definition. So that's the best answer. You cannot use the word find in this context. You're not saying whether this behavior finds the definition or joins the definition. Those don't fit the context. An encounter is used in a more physical context, right? For an encounter between the police and the criminal, right? So not encounter the definition of teaching. So D is the best answer. As used in line 65, promoted most nearly means. Okay, 65, this here. Thornton and McAuliffe were also able to provide experimental evidence that the helper's behavior promoted skill acquisition. So that would be fostered. To foster is to encourage, to kind of create the conditions for something. So they were looking at whether the helper's behavior promoted, fostered, created the conditions for skill acquisition. So this is good. To elevate is to kind of bring somebody to a higher pedestal. So that doesn't fit the context of creating the conditions for skill development. Announce is to actually announce, make an announcement. So that is not correct in this context. And recommend is when you say good things about someone to a potential employer or a potential school. So that also doesn't fit the context of promoting. So B. According to the passage, meerkat pups who played with living but harmless versions of meerkat's usual prey were less able to discern when prey was dangerous than were pups who encountered intact prey, less likely to consume enough to survive than were pups who were provided with dead prey, more skillful at handling intact prey than were pups who were provided with dead prey, more likely to lose their prey than were pups who encountered intact prey. So this is C, right? This is given here. Pups that were artificially given additional opportunities to handle live stingless scorpions subsequently outperformed siblings that had been given dead scorpions, showing that the opportunity to practice on disabled but live scorpions facilitates skill acquisition. So the idea of giving them live but harmless versions improved their ability to handle prey compared with pups who were provided with dead prey. So C. These options about discerning whether the prey was dangerous or less likely to consume enough to survive or losing prey, none of those are supported by the passage. Which statement about the provisioning of prey to meerkat pups can most reasonably be inferred from the passage? Typically, young meerkat pups who are being instructed do not immediately consume prey that has been provided by adults. Young meerkat pups can safely interact with prey that has been provided by a helper only after the helper has killed it. As an element of the training process, helper meerkats provide a greater variety of prey to younger pups than they do to older pups. And when pups are still learning, direct experience with manipulating prey takes precedence over direct experience with acquiring prey. Is this an evidence-based question? Yes. So I think it's C, but I would like to verify this with the line numbers. So let me just mark the line numbers here. Recent and prey, line 46, and 26, adult pup. Okay. Line 46, recent and prey. Okay, it's here somewhere. Is it recent and prey? No, it would be this, right? Recent and prey. So this would be line 14 to 17, right? 14 to 17. Okay, let me just mark that. Yeah, this is 14 to 17. 26 to 30, adult pup. 63, Thornton acquisition. Adult and pup. Okay, and 60, Thornton and acquisition. Yeah, this entire paragraph. Thornton and acquisition. Okay. So that was 60 to 63 to 66 and 75 to 82, clue and prey. Uh, 63 to 66, yeah. Clue and prey, this one. And handling prey. Okay. So we are looking at evidence for one of these, and the question is about the provisioning of prey to meerkat pups can most reasonably be inferred from the passage. Okay, so let's just read one by one. So recent work shows that the helpers facilitate this transition to nutrition independence by gradually introducing pups to live prey. So there is an element of gradual introduction of pups to live prey. So let's just see if there was any option that referred to that. So I definitely can cancel B because I know that B is not true because there are young pups that interact with live prey. And okay, and what about, yeah, so there's no evidence for any support in the first one. Okay, second one. Adult meerkats normally consume prey immediately, but when young pups are present, they typically kill or disable mobile prey items before carrying them to a begging pup. Okay, so this relates to adult meerkats not eating the prey immediately when they have to teach the young ones. So this is not about the young meerkats not immediately consuming prey that has been provided to adults, right? That those line numbers are talking about adults themselves consuming the prey immediately if they are not teaching. So I don't think this makes sense, but let's just continue reading. Okay, so that was the second option. The next is here. Thornton and McAuliffe were also able to provide experimental evidence that the helper's behavior promoted skill acquisition. Wasn't there some line number about older pups and yeah, something here. So did I miss out these lines? Wasn't this part of the evidence? Let's just check. Thornton acquisition. Yeah, okay, so this is not. Okay, so, and what's the last one? A clue as to why helpers teach is found with the observation that pups very rarely find mobile prey items themselves. Helpers can therefore actively facilitate the pups' acquisition by giving them otherwise unavailable opportunities to practice handling prey. Okay, right. So then, yeah. Okay, so I think D works then because this would have made sense, I think, when we were talking about younger versus older pups, but that's not even part of the evidence, right? And we have already cancelled A. And in D, we are saying that when pups are still learning, direct experience with manipulating prey takes precedence over direct experience with acquiring prey. And that's supported here because here I'm saying that helpers teach because pups very rarely find mobile prey items themselves. So acquisition is not really important. They need to understand how to handle prey. So handling is more important, which is what these lines are saying. And option D is saying as well. So this is D as well. According to figure 1, in groups with young pups, approximately what proportion of prey is provided intact when the helper meerkats hear an old pup's call? Okay. In groups with young pups, what proportion of prey is provided intact when the helper meerkats hear an old pup's call? Okay, so um, groups with young pups and old pups. So this is about 0.45, right? So that would be 0.45, option C. The information in figure 1 best supplies which claim made in the passage about helper meerkats and the prey they provide. Okay, so let's just look at figure 1. So the proportion of the prey that is provided intact is higher for a young pup begging call when the group is made up of old pups, right? I think that is what was being discussed here. They played recordings of begging calls of old pups to groups with young pups, which led adults to bring back live prey, while playing the calls of young pups to groups with old pups caused an increase in the proportion of dead prey provisioned. So there was an increase in the proportion of dead prey when there was a young pup called, begging call heard within a group of old pups. So that would be, in groups with young pups, meerkat helpers will reposition prey if the pups ignore it initially. In groups with old pups, meerkat helpers are more likely to provide dead prey in response to the calls of young pups than in response to the calls of old pups. So this is what we are looking for. If young pups allow prey to escape, helpers will retrieve the prey and further reduce its ability to escape before returning it to the pups. When pups are allowed to practice on disabled prey, they become more adept at handling intact prey. So none of these options are talking about the first figure categorically, right? Because in the first figure, we are only looking at the provisioning of dead prey by meerkat helpers, and that is only referred to in option B. According to figure 2, the proportion of prey found by a meerkat pup is closest to zero point 0.2 when the pup is. So 0.2, it's 0.2 when the pup is 70 days old, right? So that would be option C. Okay, let's grade this. 21. CACDB, CACDB, 26, CDDCBC, CDDCBC. Okay, great. So we got all correct.